When someone you love goes silent, your instinct might scream at you to fix it, to force a connection, to grab them and say, "Talk to me." But hear me, silence doesn't always mean disconnection. Sometimes it's a cry for space. Sometimes it's a heart that's afraid of being misunderstood again. And if that person is avoidantly attached, they're not running from you. They're retreating into the only safety they've ever known: distance. You must understand something sacred about silence. It is not your enemy. It is an opportunity. An avoidant silence is not a test of your words. It's a test of your energy. It's not, "What will you say?" It's, "Can you hold me in my unspoken pain without making it about you?" So what do they want to hear when the world inside them has gone quiet? They want to hear presence, not pressure. They want to feel not forced, but free. They want someone to say, "I'm here. I'm not asking anything of you. I just want you to know your silence doesn't scare me. You're not too much for me, and you're not alone." You see, we live in a world that rushes, that demands instant answers, constant performance, nonstop communication. But healing, deep, cellular, soul-level healing, it happens in the stillness. The silence is sacred. And those who are avoidant, they've never felt safe in chaos. They've had to be their own island for too long. So if you want to reach them, you have to become the shore they want to swim to, not the wave that crashes down on them. So when they go silent, don't chase, don't lecture, don't punish, stand in love, radiate acceptance, say the words that unlock trust, not defense. You're allowed to take your time. I'm not going anywhere. When they expect judgment, bring grace. When they fear abandonment, embody presence. When they're drowning in self-protection, be the quiet, steady breath that reminds them they are still worthy of love, even when they can't show up. Because the truth is, what they've always longed for is someone who doesn't need them to perform to be loved. Someone who can see the trembling soul behind the armor and say, "I don't need to fix you. I just want to love you." That's how healing happens. That's how the avoidant learns to stay. Not through pressure, through peace. And if you can master that, if you can be that, you don't just become someone they trust. You become someone who rewires their reality. You become the miracle they never believed existed. When an avoidant partner goes silent, it's easy to interpret that silence as rejection. But what most people fail to understand is that silence for the avoidant isn't about pushing others away out of malice. It's about survival. It's a coping mechanism forged in early emotional experiences where vulnerability wasn't safe and emotional needs were often ignored, minimized, or punished. So rather than reaching out, they retreat. They shut down, not because they don't care, but because they care too much and don't know how to safely hold what they feel. Their nervous system has been wired to associate intimacy with risk. Being close to someone can feel threatening, so silence becomes a shield, a way to avoid triggering old pain, confusion, or shame that was never properly processed. Avoidants often grew up in environments where emotions were inconvenient or seen as weakness. Maybe they had caregivers who were emotionally distant, overly critical, or simply unavailable. So they learned early on that showing neediness or expressing feelings didn't result in comfort, it resulted in disappointment. As adults, they repeat the same patterns. When they feel emotionally activated, their first instinct is to pull away and regulate alone, because that's what kept them safe in the past. And when you come at them with questions or emotional demands during this time, it doesn't bring them closer. It pushes them further into isolation. That's why their silence is not rejection, it's protection. It's a self-soothing strategy, even if it seems counterproductive. They're not punishing you. They're trying to survive a moment that feels internally overwhelming. In that silence, they're often wrestling with fears of inadequacy, self-doubt, and the terror of being fully seen. Because deep down, many avoidants carry the belief that if someone really saw their emotional chaos, they'd walk away. So they hide, they go quiet. And if you interpret that silence as hostility or coldness, you're missing the truth beneath it. They're scared. Now, here's where the power shifts. If you can learn to see their silence as a protective shell instead of a personal attack, you stop reacting and start responding. You bring compassion instead of confrontation. You become a safe emotional presence rather than a source of additional stress. And that, more than anything, is what the avoidant needs. They need to feel that their silence doesn't jeopardize the connection, that your love can hold space for their retreat, because the moment they sense your energy doesn't panic when they pull away. something sacred happens. They begin to trust. Silence then becomes a doorway, not a wall. Is your opportunity to say, without words sometimes, I see you. Even when you're quiet, you matter. I'm not walking away just because you're overwhelmed. That message, through your energy, tone, and calm, is what breaks the cycle of fear. And over time, your understanding of their silence becomes the very thing that teaches them how to eventually open up without fear. Avoidants are often misunderstood when it comes to emotional needs. On the surface, they may appear independent, indifferent, or emotionally disconnected, but beneath that exterior is someone deeply afraid of being overwhelmed or consumed by intimacy. What they crave more than anything isn't someone who can force them to talk or confront their emotions on command. It's someone who can stand beside them in the discomfort and say, you're safe. You don't have to be anything other than who you are right now. They don't need pressure. They need permission. They need to know that it's okay to go at their own pace, to show up in silence without being interrogated, and to feel their emotions without being judged. Reassurance without pressure sounds simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It looks like saying, you don't have to talk right now. I'm just here, instead of asking, why are you shutting me out? It means holding space without demanding results. For an avoidant, that kind of energy is healing because deep down, they want connection. They just don't trust it. They fear that the moment they open up, they'll be smothered, criticized, or emotionally invaded. So the presence of someone who can accept them without pushing becomes magnetic. It gives them the freedom to explore vulnerability on their own terms. This kind of reassurance is not about letting them off the hook emotionally or enabling avoidant behavior. It's about showing them a new model for intimacy, one where they're not punished for needing space and not required to perform emotionally in order to be loved. When you meet them with calmness instead of urgency, you communicate, I believe in your capacity to come back to me when you're ready. That belief, that steady emotional grounding, creates the very environment where they feel safe enough to take small emotional risks. Most avoidants were conditioned to believe that emotions come with strings attached, that expressing a need would lead to guilt, shame, or control. So when they're silent, they're watching your response closely. Are you going to react with frustration? Will you make their silence about you? Or will you show them something they've rarely seen, someone who doesn't need them to be on to feel loved? When they sense that they're allowed to be quiet, not as a punishment, but as a phase of regulation, they begin to feel something unfamiliar. Trust. Trust that they can be accepted in their natural rhythm. Trust that your presence isn't a threat. And in that trust, they begin to relax. They begin to soften. And slowly, sometimes without even realizing it, they begin to open up, not because you forced them, but because you made it safe enough for them to choose it. Avoidants don't need pressure to connect. They need a connection that doesn't press. The simple act of saying, I'm not here to force anything, just to walk beside you, can change everything. It tells them they're not a problem to fix. They're a person to love, even in their silence. When an avoidant person goes silent or pulls back, it's natural for the other person in the relationship to feel anxious, confused, or even abandoned. That anxiety often leads to a desperate need for clarity, which then shows up as a barrage of questions. Are you mad at me? Why won't you talk? What's wrong? But what most people don't realize is that this response, though understandable, only deepens the avoidance instinct to withdraw. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, intense questioning feels invasive, even if it's met with love. It puts pressure on a nervous system already in survival mode, and in that moment, what they truly need isn't interrogation, it's validation. Validation means saying, I see that you're overwhelmed and I get it. You don't need to explain yourself right now. It's a signal of safety, not demand. Avoidants were often raised in environments where their emotions were dismissed or minimized. They learned early on that expressing their inner world led to disappointment or punishment. So now, when they're feeling something intense, fear, anger, sadness, they instinctively suppress it. They shut down not because they want to be distant, but because they were never taught how to process their emotions in a healthy way. So, the moment they go silent, what they need most is someone who doesn't take it personally and instead offers emotional understanding. This kind of validation can come through words, energy, or even silence. It's in saying things like, I know this might be a lot right now. I just want you to know that I'm here when you're ready. It's offering a steady presence rather than urgent questions. That steadiness is like emotional oxygen for the avoidant. It allows them to breathe, to settle, to recognize that they're not being forced out of hiding, but being gently invited into connection. The power of validation is that it meets the avoidant where they are, instead of dragging them to where you want them to be. It's the difference between saying, "Why won't you talk to me?" And I imagine things feel heavy. You don't have to go through it alone. One makes them feel attacked, the other helps them feel seen. One closes the door further, the other cracks it open just enough for trust to peek through. Avoidants respond not to pressure, but to peace. When someone speaks to them with patience and grounded compassion, it disarms their defenses. It tells them, "You're not broken, you're not wrong for needing space. You don't have to earn my love by explaining your pain." That message, delivered not just in words, but in the tone behind the words, gives them permission to feel without fear. And in that permission, so the next time they go silent, try meeting them with a soft voice, an open heart, and a steady energy, not to fix them, not to get an answer, but to simply remind them, you matter, even when you're quiet. Because sometimes the most healing thing we can say is nothing at all, just our calm presence saying, "I see you." It's easy to mistake an avoidant silence for emotional absence, but silence doesn't mean they've stopped caring. It means they're processing in their own way, often silently, internally, and cautiously. Many people believe that if someone isn't speaking, they're not listening. That couldn't be further from the truth when it comes to avoidant individuals. They are highly attuned to what's being said, often picking up on tone, energy, and nuance more than people realize. They may not show it on their face, and they may not respond in the moment, but they are absorbing every word. The avoidant mind is often busy behind a calm or distant expression, analyzing, reflecting, and asking themselves, is this safe? Can I trust this moment? Will this hurt me later? Avoidants were often conditioned in early life to stay quiet and keep the peace, to stay invisible in emotional situations, because speaking up didn't lead to understanding, it led to conflict, shame, or neglect. So now, as adults, they've developed a habit of going inward when faced with relational intensity. They seem unbothered on the surface, but inside, they're having entire conversations with themselves about how to stay emotionally safe. In these moments, their silence becomes a form of self-regulation. They're not tuning you out, they're tuning into themselves, trying to calm the emotional static that's building inside them. This is why what you say during their silence matters perhaps more than at any other time. They may not respond immediately, but they're taking mental notes. They're measuring your tone, your patience, your ability to stay grounded. What they want to hear is emotional safety, not blame, not panic, not ultimatums, statements like, "You don't need to say anything, I just want you to know I care," or "I'm here whenever you're ready," land deeply even if the avoidant gives no sign that it's reaching them. In fact, the more neutral or composed you are in that moment, the more impact your words can have. The mistake many people make is trying to force a response. But an avoidant doesn't respond well to pressure. It triggers their need to pull away even more. What they need is your consistent emotional tone, your soft presence, and your trust that they're still there with you even if they're not speaking. This builds a foundation of safety where they can eventually feel secure enough to open up. When they see that your energy remains stable in their silence, it teaches them that they can engage without fear of emotional chaos. Avoidants don't need fixing, they need understanding, and they're listening even when they don't speak. Every calm word you speak, every patient pause you allow becomes a building block in their sense of relational safety. So speak gently, speak with love, and trust the process. Because even in silence, avoidants are listening, and your energy is writing the script for what they will believe about connection and safety. Trust is not something an avoidant person gives freely or quickly. It's not built through grand gestures or intense emotional conversations. It's built slowly, subtly, and often in moments where nothing is being said at all. The pause is sacred. It's the space between reaction and response, between fear and connection. And it's in that space where the avoidant is watching most closely. They are not looking for perfection. They are not looking for someone to fix them. They are searching for stability, for someone who doesn't flinch when things get quiet, for someone whose love doesn't become conditional the moment they need space. When an avoidant shuts down or becomes distant, it's easy to assume they're detaching out of disinterest. But in reality, their nervous system is overwhelmed. Their silence is often not a decision, it's a reaction. Their internal alarm system has gone off, telling them it's not safe to engage, to feel, to be close. In that fragile moment, what they need isn't someone rushing in with questions, demands, or intensity. What they need is calm presence. Someone who can say, through energy and action, I trust your process. I don't need to force this. I'm here. Most people miss the opportunity in the pause. They become uncomfortable with the stillness and try to fill it. But real connection with an avoidant is created when you resist the urge to push and instead learn how to hold space. This doesn't mean you abandon your needs or silence your truth. It means you honor theirs. It means you recognize that trust is not built by pulling someone out of hiding. It's built by showing them they're still safe when they're not performing. When you sit with someone's silence and meet it with grace rather than urgency, something shifts. The avoidant begins to internalize a new message. I can be in this relationship and still have space. That message is transformative. It tells them that connection doesn't have to cost them their autonomy. It tells them they won't be punished for needing to breathe. And in that message lies the seed of trust, not just in you, but in the idea that intimacy itself might not be dangerous after all. Avoidants often expect that when they go quiet, the other person will grow impatient, angry, or withdrawn. It's a cycle they know too well. They need space, the other person reacts, and the relationship becomes unsafe. But when you respond differently, when you bring calm instead of chaos, understanding instead of accusation, you disrupt the pattern. You become a new kind of presence in their life, one they didn't believe existed. Trust with an avoidant is not built in words. It's built in your ability to pause with them, to allow their nervous system to settle, to give them the room to come closer on their own. And in that stillness, in that choice not to push, you give them the greatest gift of all, the freedom to trust you at their own pace. Avoidants aren't looking for someone to come in and fix them. In fact, the moment they sense that they're being analyzed, corrected, or handled, they shut down even more. What they truly want is to feel safe, not scrutinized. They want someone to be with them in their emotional world without trying to change it. At the core of the avoidant experience is the belief that they have to deal with everything on their own, that their emotions are too messy or too much to share with someone else. So when they do go silent, it's not because they want to create distance. It's because vulnerability still feels dangerous. And what they need in those moments is not advice, it's presence. Not instruction, but affirmation. An avoidant person might not say it outright, but what they long to hear is, I see your strength even when you're quiet, or you don't need to explain yourself for me to care. These words send a very different signal than most people are used to giving in moments of disconnect. When you stop trying to fix them, you allow space for them to feel accepted as they are. And for an avoidant, that's a revolutionary experience. Their whole lives may have been shaped by conditional love, the kind of love that shows up only when they perform, behave, or express emotions in the right way. So when someone loves them through their silence, through their distance, without demanding change, it disarms them in the best possible way. Trying to fix someone implies that something is broken. But avoidants don't respond well to being seen as projects. They've spent years protecting themselves from that kind of pressure. What helps them feel safe is knowing that they are allowed to be in process, that they can be unsure, quiet, afraid, and still be loved. This kind of emotional safety is not built through intensity. It's built through steadiness. When they sense that you're not trying to rush their healing, they begin to trust the relationship more. They begin to believe that they don't have to hide their internal world just to be accepted. There's deep spiritual wisdom in choosing presence over performance. Avoidants have often developed armor out of necessity, emotional self-reliance, independence, the ability to walk away. But underneath that armor is someone who wants to be seen and held, not fixed. And when you say, I don't need you to be anything other than what you are right now, you give them the permission they've always needed but never received. You become a safe space, not a source of pressure. And to become someone who doesn't need to be anything, but instead just has to be somebody you are, which means that when you discover that best self, they come avoidants. They open up, they do nurture, they create, they connect, they conform, they feel love, they aren't unfettered. And it's in that safety that they begin to come forward, not because they were forced, but because they were finally free to choose connection. This is how trust is built with an avoidant. Not by trying to change them, but by loving them exactly where they are. Because when someone feels truly safe, they start to transform on their own, not out of fear, but out of love. So if you truly want to reach the heart of someone who goes silent, don't try to fix them. Feel them. Let your presence speak what words can't, that they are safe, even in their silence. Because when love is patient, when love listens without pressure, it becomes powerful. Thank you for taking the time to grow in understanding, to choose compassion over control. Your willingness to meet someone where they are can become the healing they never thought they'd find.